welcome to the Improv Summit. As always, I'm Spencer. With me today, I have Preston. Preston, how's it going?
I'm good, Spencer. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. I've now decided that I actually have a sitting, what is this, a setup? That's the word I was looking for. A setup that I can use so I don't have to sit on my floor anymore. I just now discovered that that's doable. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm now sitting not on the floor. It's much more free.
That's good. I'm always a standing guy. That's how I am at work and stuff. So
you're so upstanding.
I'm so upstanding, man. Come on.
Anyway,
I'm gonna upstand you, huh?
Oh yeah, I can outstand your upstand.
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, let's dive in, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's talk about improv. What is your background in improv? I know it's a very general question, but just tell me what you want to tell me.
Well, basic improv. I watched Whose Lines It Anyway, of course. I don't know if anyone else has, but it's a fun little thing. It's on, if you have an HBO Max subscription, it's on there. While it's a fun show to watch and you think, wow, these guys are just on point the whole time, you have to keep in mind too, they're doing take after take after take, and they're just keeping what's golden in that way. So you don't think that they're an unstoppable force when it comes to Colin Mockery and Ryan Stiles. Just also think, I actually love watching the bloopers because those are the moments, and they actually have an episode where they leave it in because Ryan Stiles, he's the tall guy, he himself just spaced, and he said, I can't think of anything. And they kept it in because Drew Carey helps him out, and that's what makes it fun. But keeping that in mind, I grew up on that, and I always watched it with my Uncle Tim and my brothers, and we would just laugh at that because it's just fun comedy. And believe it or not, I was very introverted when I was little. I know with the expression that I have now, but I was always just kind of the person who would just take my surroundings in, and just watch and take everything. And I actually told some people when I was younger, when they were over, I'm like, oh, it's great that you came, but could you leave now, please? Kind of thing. But improv is a great thing because I am a performer as well. I'm an actor, and I'm also part of a Shakespeare company called Shakespeare in the Vines in Temecula, California. Little plug there. I'm artistic
We'll get to it again.
There. Yeah,
let's see if we get it in there.
We'll get to it again. Yeah,
let's see if we get to it 3 times. The rule of 3.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it 3 times.
Yeah. Okay.
But we'll. I always felt improv as a real necessity, even just for actors, because while I mostly do live theater, I've done some screen things and so forth. I am currently still, even though we've kind of been on a hiatus, part of a group called PRN, Pseudorandom Noise is what it's short for. And we are an improv troupe. We performed at the Merc in Temecula, California, along with other kind of small little like coffee shops and things throughout the area. And we would do just the usual like improv games of, well, you say games, we called them, oh gosh, what did we call them? Games or mechanics is what we would call them. Yeah, we'll get into that a little more later. But and we would perform. We'd had different nights where we literally had colored wristbands for audience members, and they would come in with a wristband, and very much like medieval times, your performer was your wristband, and so you would always want to make sure that they won at the end of the show. The other one, of course, was just the usual kind of in context of Whose Line of different things that we did throughout the show just to entertain people. But we were also big on audience participation. We would always put the audience on the spot in the way of course, recommendations like usual improv shows, but we'd also use, we would incorporate them. So we would ask for volunteers from the audience to come up and perform with us, and we would perform around them while we gave them just like little mundane tasks, like the usual, the dead bodies, in that way. So, or miming, excuse me, is what it would be, where we literally can't move and they have to move for us in the scene. And that's the funny thing with improv. You have all these same games or mechanics that we all have, but they all have different names depending on the group that you're with. It's funny, like,
I don't call it dead bodies.
Yeah, you don't call it dead bodies? Well, okay.
But no, I
we didn't call it dead bodies. That's just all I can think of at the moment. You know,
I think it's just. I guess it's just moving bodies is what I call.
Yeah, moving bodies. There you go. But
I hate that game, by the way. I hate that game so much.
Oh, you do? Oh, yeah, I love that.
It's because of my. I think it's because of my eye. Like I just can't see half of the stage. So I already like there's a thing with trust. I'll let you get back. I just on this tangent now. There's already a thing of like trust with improvisers is being able to see, you know, and like knowing what's going on. But then if I turn my back, I still trust my partner. But then not being able to like do anything is more terrifying because one, I can't see, but two, I have no idea in time and space where this person is at any given time. I know what you mean. And that's for me like something that I have to figure out a way to make it accessible and adaptable for me. But it doesn't really always work that way. Anyway, back to you.
There are games that, of course, I didn't like myself. You know, I mean, while I am a musically inclined person, I always freak out when it came to any of the musical games of like, you know, make a musical on the spot. And so you're literally saying, I do enjoy it. It depends on, it's serious when it comes to my mind. Depends on how my mind is that night. It's the weirdest thing because there are some nights I'm just flying and I'm on game and it's great. And then there's nights where you're just like, I'm totally spaced. I don't even have a song that I can think of with the phrase I just said, you know, those kind of things. That's why that game's always kind of 50-50 with me. Depends on what the mood I am. And here's the funny thing too, our host, who's kind of like our leader of the troupe, whenever we did our next games and stuff, he would make it up on the spot. He didn't tell us that you're going to do this game and stuff. We would literally be sitting there on our stools and it'd be like, okay, for this next game, I'm going to need Preston, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, okay, you get up there and you don't even find out what the game is until he announces it. And then here's the fun part. We all look at each other as troupe members, whoever you're with, and you're just like, are you okay? And sometimes it's just like, yeah, I'm going to be good. Are you going to be good? And you're just like, I don't know.
Like, we'll find out. It's improv.
We'll find out. It's improv. Exactly. Well, and that's the beautiful thing about improv is because the only word I can really say is you really are exposing yourself in a way for failure. And that's not bad. It really isn't, because you look at stand-up comics, just taking stand-up comedy today, you know, it takes years and years of them to get their routines down. They're literally going from club to club and finding out what works and what doesn't work. And they're changing it on the spot to where those specials you're watching on Netflix, Amazon, whatever you're watching on, that's from years and years of material that they're doing. You know, and that's what people fail to see. They're like, how did this person get up there and why have I haven't heard of them? Because they're literally in nightclubs where they're being heckled each night. And so that's where improv for me, it is a necessity for a performer, but also I would just say public speaking in general as well, because there are times where, hey, it's great to have a written word in front of you, but something could go wrong. You know, you can't have your teleprompter working. You can't have anything, you know, you lost your notes. You can't, but you remember the general outcome of your notes. So, and as a performer, and I perform mostly classical theater with Shakespeare in the Vines, plug number 2. And then
only have one more. Only have one
more. I'll be sure to save that one. But also just theater in general, because you have your hiccups and your whole point is to keep the illusion alive and not show that there's a mistake. And those are the big compliment moments of, especially when you know you have improv training, because there are people who literally just freeze on stage. And I've been with people where, for example, in one of the shows I've been in, 12th Night, if anyone knows about it, it's about, you know, just the typical Shakespeare cross-dressing comedy in that way. That's really all I'll say. Look it up yourself.
That's pretty much all it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much all it is when it comes to his comedies. But I played the fool, and really good friend of mine who was the Duke at the time, he came out with deer in the headlights looks at me, and he looked at me and said, "How art thou?" And totally missed like a whole page of dialogue between me and him. And because of improv training and just knowing to be on your feet, I'm like looking at him like, okay, I know where you are, but I got you. Don't worry. And I can take you to where we need to be. And that's what improv really does for you, is it's like a silent language in your eyes and your eyebrows. You're just like looking at each other like, you got this? Yeah, I got this. Okay, we're going to do this. And it's also just trusting in your partner too, really great scene work with people, because it's really, it's a team effort. Like I said, there's going to be days where I truly am like on like, woohoo, this is going to be great. This is fun. I'm having a great time. And there's going to be days where it's just the usual work day and you're just like, I can't think of anything. I'm spent, but I know I have to be here tonight, and I want to be here. Not that I don't want to be here, but creativity wise, it's just a cloud of fog.
You just have those nights.
You do. But again, though, that's where it's like you have your straight man and your fool. And that's what makes comedy gold, is when you're working together as a team, it's never to outshine anybody else. And it's always to complement. And of course, there's going to be people that people talk about more and highlight more because of the things that they did in the way of like a funny quip, a funny little drop, or, those kind of things, or physical comedy wise. They're going to really shine those people, but it's the silent hero of the person who sets up that joke. It's like, boom, there you are. I gave you a stool to get on, stand on that stool and really drive it home, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring up the idea of support with teammates, because one, it's very important, but two, it made me think of, we were talking offline about Complete Works, a bridge.
Yeah.
And I remember when I did it, I remember it was our last show, and Jess Winfield was actually watching the show online.
Yes.
And they told us that before the show, and so my brain immediately went to like, I gotta do a good job.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I'm just to stop you there, Spencer. Yeah. Always in the theater, it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts because I perform to perform. I really mean that out of the bottom of my heart. Yeah. I give 110% each night, no matter if it's 10 people in the crowd or like whatever thousands in the crowd. It drives me nuts when a producer or director comes backstage and looks at the cast and says, oh, by the way, there are judges here tonight, or there's a such and such here tonight. And I look at my castmates and I'm like, just do the same show. But they're all like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I'm like, do what you rehearsed to do. Yeah. That's where it's like, have fun, but don't think about it. Just do your performance, what you've been training for and stuff. But go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, but what it reminded me of was, so it was an afternoon show. We had done only evening shows. And my first line is, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Complete Works of William Shakespeare Bridge, blah, 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 blah. And so I was like, oh, it's a Sunday afternoon. I'll just say good afternoon. Like, whatever. I'll just change it from good evening to good afternoon. Little did I know that would trip me up so hard in the monologue for whatever reason. Because I came out and I go, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this performance. I kept talking and talking and talking. And at one point, it just like hit me that wasn't what I usually say. And I literally went, we have a great show for you here tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be let me tell you, it's going to be a great show. It's going to be a great show tonight. And I just kept saying it.
Great.
And I could tell my two scene partners were literally in the back, like doing this whole thing, like getting ready to come in. And then at one point I was like, yeah, so anyway, it's going to be a great show. Oh, what I meant to tell you was this stage. And like, so, and then I finally figured it out, but I didn't take that moment like you're talking about where people just freeze up. I wasn't like, I was just like, yeah, it's going to be a great show. And I just kept saying the same thing, but like really got more enthusiastic as I was talking about it. Because it felt like if I did that, at least you might not be able to tell that I forgot something.
Exactly. And see, that's the beauty of, because people are coming in, unless you came like back-to-back nights of like, for example, my family sometimes comes multiple times or those kind of things, but you have a new, fresh audience each night, and you're not going to be doing the same. I mean, you want to do the same thing that you rehearse, quote unquote, but things go wrong. Hello.
And things are never the same. Your energy is different every night.
Exactly.
That's the beauty of live theater. But even then, that monologue, because we were doing it for camera as opposed to for an actual live audience due to, COVID, instead of be like, you're all here in these seats tonight, you know, all the airline flight attendant passenger stuff, we cut all of that because it made no sense on camera.
Yeah,
so
we did the same thing. I did the same production. I was in the same show. But we obviously, our guy got out there and he actually kept that because it was hilarious because we were in open air theater. But besides that, he changed it up too. There were things that you obviously are just like, you need to change this because it's not relevant anymore, or so forth. But go ahead.
Yeah, there are some things in there that we definitely changed, and they were like, yeah, we're going to take a look at this to see if we should change it too. I'm like, you should definitely change the whole Othello scene. Anyway, with a bunch of white guys talking about, you know, being Othello, like let's change this. Anyway, but yeah, so the director wrote like a whole new monologue, and so I was like, first of all, because I think actually Daniel and Jess both watched the show on different nights. But, you know, Daniel saw one version of it, Jess saw another version of it, but they might have seen a different show. I can guarantee you they don't remember exactly every part of that monologue because they didn't actually write that monologue. But two, I was feeling it was so bad. My partners were like, it wasn't as bad as you think it was because you kept going, which again, improv helped me keep going. But it's one of those things where, you know, it's like, I could literally be making it up on the fly and it would still be fine because it's not, it's a little, and again, with the playwright, you want to kind of stick true to what the playwright wrote. But when we get the liberty to like play with it or change it up as needed, and then our director writes a whole monologue who says, play with it, then it's like, I'm just kind of playing with it. You know, but I was like, I messed it up, but everything else was fine. We did everything else fine. It was great, but it just was like one of those
I had a similar experience I was in a Christmas Carol production, and we did a fun little quip of like, you know, stay in your seats, because it was in the Circle in the Round is what we performed in. And so we did a fun little thing of like, stay in your seats, and it was all to a rhyme. But the night before, the way that this run worked was we actually performed for schools, which was really, really fun. And that's where we got our pay involved with that, because the schools paid to come see the performances. Not that everyone else didn't, but it was a special because we're taking our time out of our day to perform for them. Anyway, we were all tired, but at the same time, we're just like excited because it was our first public viewing. And so I go out there and I'm going to do that. And I got this monologue the night before. And I'm like, okay, I can memorize this, definitely. And it was a simple like nursery rhyme, 'tis the night before Christmas and you're in for a treat, but be sure to leave room while you sit in your seats, those kind of things and stuff. Because we did walk through like the audience and stuff like that. But I totally spaced. I got it the night before. I came out to do it. I did it great in the rehearsal run. But again, this is me being fatigued. I come out, I'm in character. I'm just like, yeah, here we go. And then I'm just like, hi there. But the good thing that kept it going was I kept the rhyme, but it was totally like, whoa, all over the place. But I didn't break per se because I was tired at the time, but I still kept it going to where people got the jest and there's just like, enjoy the show. And I left. Everyone off stage was just like, you good? I'm like, oh, I'm great. I'm just tired, but I'll get it better tomorrow night. Just know that. And they're all like, well, it was still fine, but you just, I just want to make sure you're okay. You know?
Yeah. It reminds me of, I did 5 shows at Fringe last year. It was a lot. Yeah. And one of the shows I did, we're like, basically the characters were like twins, but we look nothing alike. But I remember one time they had us go and introduce like what's happening in the show and like the fire exits and, turn off your cell phones and all this stuff. Yeah. But we're doing it like in our characters. And every night we come out and we go like, as the characters Abe and Gabe. I love doing that show. It was so great. But we're like, hey everybody, that's Abe and that's Gabe. And together we're Abe and Gabe. Well, I was gonna say Gabe. Anyway. And so then the first night, so like one night, it was the night that I have on recording, ironically enough, we go out.
Isn't that the best? When whenever the mess ups happen, that's when the recording happens. And you're like, well, that's imprinted in my memory forever now.
Yeah, exactly. But it was, it's recorded. But it was like an improvised thing. So they're like, just hit these beats. We're like, okay, great. So we both go out and we just start like going like, don't forget the exits are back here. And at one point I go, hey, we never introduced ourselves. And he go, yeah, we never did. Let's say who we are now. And it was so funny because we just start like barreling out in the audience. We're like, don't forget the fire exits are out here. And this is that. And we're like real Southern guys, like in this show with like bandanas and like matching hats and we didn't have hats. Anyway, matching bandanas and like matching vests and all this stuff. And like, we were like barreling in, like we own the place. And then we're like, we should probably mention who we are. And so it was like in the middle of it. And then he goes, oh yeah, I guess we forgot. But it's like, again, it's like one of those moments where like it's getting like this, like in a way it's structured improv where it's like, here's the beat you need to hit, but other than that, play with it. So really us doing that later on, it could have been that's what it was, because in the show our characters were like pretty dumb anyways. So like it kind of made sense that our characters were like this, so it kind of worked out that way anyways. So I think it is again, it's like with improv, it's like finding that character, finding what the scene is about that can help you, guide you. And if you have those like oopsie moments, like especially if it's in a theater, like where there's actual scripted words, if you're like, Hamlet and you forget part of your monologue, you can improvise off of something based on Hamlet's brooding moment in that scene, like
those are kind of hard though, because those are such iconic monologues that everyone's gonna know, well, that actor messed up right there.
I mean, the Shakespearean scholars will know that.
Exactly.
The general lay people might not.
To be or not to be is a pretty big speech though, to where if you were to improvise that, people are gonna be like, I don't remember it being like this, that kind of thing.
I guess that was a terrible example.
No. It wasn't a bad example, because there are plenty of parts probably in Shakespeare and other monologues that no one's going to be familiar with, except, like you said, any Shakespeare scholar out there who's literally just like reading the text while you're performing. I've been at performances where they've done that. Oh, good Lord. It's like, and I will say, obviously have nothing better to do with yourself.
Shakespeare is hard to memorize. It's very hard because one is like, if you skip like a stanza, you're like just completely lost, because there's a rhythm to it. And so it's tricky, and like sometimes it rhymes, but I think people think that everything in Shakespeare rhymes. It doesn't always. Especially with prose. Prose, because that's the thing that people don't realize is the verse parts and the prose parts. Now, Elizabethans, if you were to go in your time machine and go back in time, they probably Let me just hop in it real quick.
Exactly, let's do it. They probably would have. I love an interview with Ian McKellen. He actually talks about how the language of Shakespeare is it's still relevant today because of the words, and it's the absolute truth. And you have to think about the time period that he came up in too, and they actually, in some recorded, I can't pinpoint it, but in actual recorded documents of Shakespeare's time from dukes and things, they go to hear a play. They don't say they go to see a play, they go to hear a play. And so they would know in the way of language because of the auditory. And you think about all the hustle and bustle that I'm sure was going on at the time, that they're literally just trying to drown out with their words in the wooden O. And it's to where they would have identified what's verse and what's prose, because that's what they talk. People, the commoners talk prose, whereas he always put the upper class in the verse, or gods, in the verse format and stuff, to where they knew what they were saying because they were emotionally driven. But they always loved the lower people because they were prose. They talked just like a regular language. So going back to what you said it's the absolute truth that if you are one of the upper class people and you kind of lose the stanza, you can be lost. I've been in many of a show where I've actually flipped it. It was the weirdest thing, but I knew I flipped it, but they didn't, so I'm like, okay, I said this line first, but really I needed to say this line first. And so I just need to switch it back or I just need to follow with this and then keep going. It's not going to make sense to me per se, because I know what I'm trying to say and I know I messed up, but I know they're going to get, it's going to make sense to them as long as I stay in character. And that's where, again, the beauty of improv. Look, I've been at many a show, or I've witnessed a show where I'm like, you're sitting out there in the audience and you don't want to break the illusion. You don't. And that's the part of the actor. And also I would just say the production crew as well. You're trying to keep the illusion alive. And when the illusion has broken, it's kind of hard to bring the audience back into it because they're always going to refer back to, hey, remember the show that we went to that they forgot that line, or honestly, they forgot their prop, or they forgot this, or there was a delayed entrance and stuff. And those are the things that really hurt, because not to give actors discredit, because they probably do take improv classes, but I don't know their background. But a majority of actors don't, to where they literally go out there and they're just like, I'm just going to sit here and wait. And then it becomes awkward. And you're just like, is something supposed to happen? That's when the audience then, again, the illusion's broken. And the audience is like, this is pretty long. Has something happened? Or, those and that's what you don't want to do. And that's why it's important knowing what your character is. And that's what improv does for you too. You are given something, either by a randomization from an audience member shouting out a suggestion, or sometimes drawn out of a hat, or whatever it is in your troupe. You're given a character. You have to stay true to that character, no matter what it is. It could be the Swedish Chef, and you would pick up position. As long as you stay in the character, the audience is going to go with you. No matter the circumstances. I've been in many an improv show where the circumstances are just like, whoa, that's really a huge.
Was that leap, Swedish Chef?
That was my attempt at Swedish Chef.
Okay, I was like, this sounds so familiar. And I couldn't place it until like 30 seconds later.
Yeah, I said whether you're the Swedish Chef, that was my suggestion. But anyway,
I didn't even hear that.
I was just rambling on.
I just heard the voice. And then I was like, that must be the Swedish Chef.
There you go.
Maybe subconsciously, but
I
did not hear you say it.
I got ya. No, but that's where improv is great, because the whole point is, and going back to my reference of Whose Line Is It Anyway, or any other improv show that you go and watch, you really watch them and see how much of characterization they really implement. They're sometimes given the most obscure things that you're like, and you see them receive the information and they're like, wait, what? Or they chuckle to themselves, or those kind of things. And when they come out though, they're fully committed. And that's the whole point of improv acting, is you're fully committed to your character. You don't break. The minute you break and you start laughing, there are moments where the audience will laugh with you and you're like, I'm being so foolish. I've done it. I'm not gonna lie.
I do it a lot more than I should.
I've done it. I've broken character. Another example is Jimmy Fallon. He breaks character so much, but that's what the audience loves about him, is because he knows it's genuinely funny, and he's just he's trying his best to say his lines or whatever it is to keep the skit going. But the thing that makes it golden though too is the other actors, the other improvers, or the skit people, they don't break character. For example, the classic More Cowbell. Jimmy Fallon is just totally breaking character and stuff, but Christopher Walken, Will Ferrell, all the other band members, they're totally. Sorry, Siri's talking.
Siri, it's not your turn.
Yeah, they're totally staying straight face through it, and that's what makes it golden. I'm sure it still would have been a hilarious skit, but what would have happened if Jimmy Fallon didn't break character? Would it have been received as well? It's those kind of factors you have to think with certain classic SNL skits and those kind of things. So
one of my favorite SNL sketches is not because I really didn't even understand the sketch. I didn't think it was that funny, but it was with Ryan Gosling and Kate McKinnon, and they were all abducted by aliens or something.
Yeah, the alien abduction, and she's just smoking.
And Ryan Gosling just could not keep it together the whole time.
That was the first time that skit happened, because as is classic SNL, I'll just say that, they kill sketches that work. There's nothing wrong with leaving a sketch and just letting it be. They have to always go back. It's just like Hollywood. We have to have a sequel for this, in that way. And it's just like, no, just let it be what it is. Some people, I admire directors who put their foot in the ground. They're like, no, it doesn't need to be a sequel. Sure, it was a great Hollywood blockbuster, or, whatever. It made a lot of money, but I have nothing of a sequel for it.
And then sometimes the sequel works really well if it's Paddington and Paddington 2, because God bless, those movies are amazing.
I haven't watched those. I know.
You should check them out. You've
I'm
got nephews
going to.
that would enjoy Paddington.
Yes, I know that, but I have yet to watch those. But it's like also
there's a reason they have 100% approval rating from the critics.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
Yeah. I'll watch it. I will. That is one of those check off on the list.
Yeah,
I have a lot of movies I have to catch up on.
Me too.
There's a lot of movies. Even in quarantine, believe it or not,
I watched less in quarantine than I do like
Me too.
without quarantine.
Me too. I've had so much. I've been in the work space of restaurant workers, and shout out to anyone who's working in this time and everything. I know what you're feeling. Trust me. But I am also shout out to all those unemployed. I really mean that too. Hang in there. You guys are doing awesome. Thank you from someone working on the workforce. Thank you for doing what you're doing in the way of going where you need to go and social distancing. That's all I have to say.
And keeping other people away from each other and wearing their masks, because we know that they have to deal with that all the time too.
Exactly. So anyway, well, and I lost my train of thought. See, that's where improv help. Oh, no.
Oh, you got it. Improviser back.
I think improviser's back. Going on to I think I lost it. Oh, well.
It was right. I threw you off because I talked about Paddington, and then
you did. No,
it was right
Paddington.
before that.
Oh, the sequels. That's where
sequels.
Live in the moment. Live in the moment of your character. Live in the moment of whatever skit you're doing, because it's not going to be the same. I really mean that, because yes, there are great skits that they've actually developed well over time. And that's where I was going with the sequels. There are some sequels that actually outdo the original.
Shrek 2.
I enjoyed Shrek 2 slightly more than Shrek 1. It's one of those things. And I really enjoyed that. And of course, then there's those sequels where you're just like, they should have just left it alone, and it's pretty obvious. Is like, this is no longer to the appeal of just the creativity of it. This is more to the money side of it.
Well, I think it's also like, God bless My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It's my favorite movie. I'm
dude,
Greek.
I love that movie.
I'm Greek, so it's like my family. Like, I love that movie. The sequel, I enjoyed it thoroughly. But for me, the sequel, in a way, takes away from what made the first one so special, because it was like the movie about my culture, the movie about, everything. And then the second one was like capitalizing on the fact that movie was such a sleeper hit. Yeah. And it was like, we're just going to do the same thing over. And I still love the second one. I love it to death. I have it on DVD, or I have it on Blu-ray, and I watch it like once a year or whatever. I love it because it's still another movie about my heritage. But I was like, well, now I feel like I have to watch both, and I have to love both the same, because there's now a sequel to my favorite movie of all time that is a great movie on its own, but it doesn't live up to what a phenomenon the first one was. Yeah. And so I think that it is like, as much, I'm so thrilled there's a sequel, but I also would have been fine if there wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to, it's the same with characters or skits that you're doing on the spot. You're gonna have your nights where you're just truly like amazing, and then you're gonna have your nights where you're doing the same character and it's just flat, because you're gonna have a new audience, you're gonna have a new face. And the same thing, going back to it again, I go back a lot.
I don't ever go forward, so I just stay.
But an example again of SNL. I love SNL. They've been golden these last couple of years because of the news and everything like that. And they're truly just like on point in that way. But they do still have those moments where you're just like, okay, that skit was hilarious when you did it last week. You brought that same character back. And I'm all for having reoccurring characters and things, but really think about what made it good. Sometimes they just they just throw them in to throw them in, that I feel. And it's just like, that's not what made them funny. What made them funny was the situation that they were in, or the environment that they were around. And they neglect to remember those things.
I was just going to say, as long as it's the character that's funny, you can bring it back. But if it's a character being placed in a situation that's funny, is it the situation or is it the character?
Correct.
Could you place any character in that situation and it'd still be funny?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's why improv's a tricky thing. It really is, because you can have your nights where you are really on fire and you have a great audience. I've had those nights where at the end of the show, we always like to, as a troupe, we would always go out to eat afterwards, whatever was open, because we always did like our show times were usually 7 to 9 or so. So you have 3 hours there. We had like a slight intermission in between to kind of let people recuperate, those kind of things. And we would come back and do more stuff. But we would go out afterwards, and we literally would, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Spencer, but I feel every improv group does it. You kind of discuss what worked and what didn't work.
Oh, for
you
sure.
You really do, because you're looking to grow, you're looking to experience more, and you're also looking to we always huddle before every show, and there are times we're like making sure we're all in the zone. We have maybe a little like inside game we play, or those kind of things that just kind of get us going. And then we're truthful with one another. We're like, hey guys, I had a really rough day today. I might be there, I might not. Just giving you the heads up. And everyone's like, okay, we got you, those kind of things. And there's the people who are just like, hey, I am on cloud 9. I am ready to go. Let's have some fun. It's like, great. But all in all, we're in there as a troupe. We're in there as a group. And we are always on call, though, too. That was the fun thing. It's like, hey, who's available tonight? It's like, hey, I'm available, boom, 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 because, life happens. You have your schedules and those kind of things. And there are some nights where the troupe is like golden. And there's some nights where, and we all have our strengths. There's some people who are really good with, like I said, some people who are very good with the musical stuff, some people who are not so good, and so forth. And then sometimes there are nights where you're just like, everyone in this one game is just terrible.
Yeah. And even then,
well, this is going to be fun, and we're going to see how this goes.
But even as like a team with support, it's also good to keep in mind that like you were saying with like the person who's like, I may or may not, I don't know if I'm feeling it, versus the person who's like, I'm on cloud 9. This is my night. If they both show up, likely you want to support this person who's on cloud 9. Give them a show that night. Let them be the center, because they're having that moment. The person who's not feeling it, they might be like, I'm coming to support, but I really just don't put me in too much. And it's like,
exactly.
And like, that's another way to support is like, this person is having a great day. Let's just get them out there. Let them play, because they're having a good time. And and even then on like, people have their strengths and weaknesses, and weakness is a strong word, really, I guess, in the terms of improv, unless you're just saying no to everything.
It's true, because you can grow. I agree with that, because going back to me, while I think we talked about this off camera, while it terrifies me sometimes with the musical games, like literally I'm sure you have it too, you make a musical on the spot. And you're like acting and you're doing these things, you're bringing these characters to life. And then it's like, what we did was we got an audience member with a squeaky toy. And whenever they heard a funny phrase, or they felt it was just a phrase they wanted to hear about, they would squeak the toy. We would literally stop the scene. It's like, sing me a song about that, And there's some times where I'm just like,
sing it.
There are times where you say the most weird thing, like, yeah, man, my dog died yesterday, and it's just like, and it's like, sing a song about that, and you're just like, okay.
But it's also interesting, because with that, like, I two things. One is, if I know, like, for something like a sing it, one thing I know for sure is like, if I know that's the game, I know that I want to come up with those weird things, because that's when people are going to want to call it. They want to call it quickly. They don't want to have boring lines. But two, I remember once doing a scene, it was at Comedy Sports for one of the shows, and one of the class shows, and we were doing Sing It, and it was like about this couple who was doing like weird things with their relationship. It was like, don't spill the milk, otherwise we're going to be mad. And then I was like, well, let's go look at the taco book because of all the recipes. And it's like, sing it, talk about the taco book. And I was like, oh boy, okay. And like, it was one of those moments where like, it's improvised, because I would not in a million years like script myself saying that with like the idea that I was going to be singing about it on the fly.
Exactly.
So I think
and those moments you do want to put as golden opportunities, because it's literally like a bait. It's just like bait. There are times we've had audience members that come up, they don't even take the bait. They squeeze the toy. Maybe that was a wrong example when I said like my dog died, but sometimes it's just phrases of like, I was in the park yesterday, and it's just like, singing a song about that. And you're just like, that was the bait. It's like, okay. And you're like, I could do so many things about singing about the park with that way, you know, and it's just I like to fail in the way of, I'll take that back. I can be terrified of failure. I'll say that up front. And in the way of just like, I always want to have the punchline sometimes and those kind of things. And I really challenge myself on that, especially as a improviser, because there's going to be times where you don't know what the comedy is for them. You know, one of the sayings we have a lot of I wouldn't say rules, but guidelines in the way of improv for our group. And one of them was the 3Ds. Don't dumb down. And it's a great one because, you know, I've watched many a comic or maybe a skit or things to where, you know, they use the F word or like foul language and things. I'm keeping it censored for you. But sometimes though, I watch those and I'm just like, this is just trash. And I mean that in the humblest example of just like, guys, you can create better work than this. And also don't think that everyone who's going to be watching is just expecting to hear profanity or other scenarios that involve profanity. And you're just like, you're giving the audience discredit. Let them find the funny. I've had nights going back to shows. It's the same thing with script. You know, you have nights where it literally is, this is the pun or this is the joke coming up here. And then you do it, crickets.
Yeah.
But then the other thing over here, when you're just talking normally, and you get a random laughter in the crowd and it gets the whole crowd going. And you're just like, okay, I gotcha. And that's the other thing with improv too, is you never know where the laughs are going to come. You never know. Whereas I've been with many an actor who wasn't an improviser and was very much point A, point B, point C kind of acting. And nothing wrong with that. If that's your game, great. It's wrong in the fact of if you're expecting a laugh, you're not going to get it sometimes. And that's where there have been moments where they're like, and then this. And they're literally frozen on stage. And I'm just like, dude, keep acting. Keep moving, keep doing something because you're literally just frozen there, and yet they didn't laugh, you know. So
it's true. Well, I'm gonna segue completely unrelated.
Unrelated. Let's get on our segues and go.
Oh, that's you act like that hasn't been a joke before already.
I know.
It has. Thanks, WDS and my joke from like several episodes back.
Okay.
Anyway, do you have any like plugs or pitches? I know there's one that you got one left, but
I have one left.
Other plugs?
Shakespeare in the Vines. We are, of course, we're being very COVID friendly in the way of we're setting parameters. We are getting things in motion. We will be having open auditions for. I'm going to be honest, this is a recorded thing. We're getting things in motion right now. So I don't know if we're doing one show or if we're doing multiple shows. But all in all, we're doing something this summer. Open auditions. Go to shakespeareinthevines.org if you want to come and audition for us. If you are new to Shakespeare, I really encourage you to go. If you are Shakespeare Pro, I encourage you to go. We look for fresh faces. We have our people that we love and enjoy, but we are always happy when people walk into the room that we know nothing of, and they just blow us away. And we always need male performers, most highly, but female performers, but also ethnicity. I really mean that. You know, directors always say they want ethnicity in their shows, and yet when it's not represented or, you know, just brought into the room, they have to do with what they're given. And so that's where, and sometimes even like my directors will shift their entire vision of their show based on talent that they see. They really do. And so that's where I give that little plug there. If you want to come out and audition for us, shakespeareinthevines.org. There you are.
Great. Any other plugs, pitches? That's it?
That's really all I have at this
Great.
moment, because for me, I'm an open book. You never know. I never know sometimes schedule wise. I get offered things sometimes. I audition myself for things, and I don't really know what
So
else
Preston's
to
looking
plug.
for work if anybody out there has
Yeah,
any
I'm
work.
looking for work too. Hey, I'm open when it comes to any ideas or those kind of things. Let's get the whole thing rolling.
Great. Now I have one final question for you, because this is the Improv Summit. And let's say that the reason why I did this is because people always come up to me all the time and they're like, Spencer, where should I take improv? And because I've done a lot of different places with improv, it's hard for me to give a specific answer to that. But if someone came up to you and said, Preston, where should I take improv? What's like one piece of advice or like one tidbit that you would give them to guide them in their path to the improv experience?
You could go, it depends on what you are. That's the main thing too, because you could easily drive to LA and look for improv everywhere. You have your, Second City Improv, you have the Comedy Club, all these other things and stuff too, that you could easily drive out there. But I would encourage you to look in your own community. I would encourage you to look around at whatever clubs are around your community, or even sometimes Craigslist or those kind of things. You want to be cautious, of course, don't get me wrong, but I was at the time, believe it or not, I still live in the Palm Springs area. I have yet to kind of move out of this area, but the way I got started with my improv group, I was just out in Temecula area doing my usual stuff with, I can't say it because I use my three.
You can say it. No, you can say it. You can say it.
I was just using, well, I also did other things though too. I didn't just do
SITV.
SITV. There you go. But I was just out in the Riverside area in general. And I had a friend who said, hey, I would love for you to join our group. We're having open auditions. And I was like, okay, I'll see it. And thankfully my schedule aligned. I went in, I had fun with them. And the other thing too is, it's a legit group is when they ask you why you want to take improv, because they're not necessarily, not everyone can take it. They just want to know the reason why you're coming to them. If they are looking, if you're like, well, I just want to be funny, it's one of those things just like, oh, okay. But we have people actually who are not actors in our group. They came because they wanted to get better at social speaking. They wanted to get better at connecting with an audience, whether they were a social speaker or sometimes in their own work environment, to tell you the honest truth. They just wanted to break out of their shell. And they knew that doing something like this, because it involves you being open. And yes, you do fun, crazy stuff a majority of the time. It brings you out of your comfort zone. It really does. And again, I have things I'm comfortable with that improv helps me get out of my comfort zone. So that's my little plug. If anyone were to come up to me on the street and say, hey, where should I take improv? Find a local group that's around you and see what you can do to grow that group and help them grow, or just grow yourself. And like sometimes it's even, sometimes it's even better, because not to downgrade it, Second City Improv, they see a lot of people all the time. It's one of those things that, sure, you have your group you're part of. If I'm correct, Spencer, that you're literally a class and you go up together, because that's how it's supposed to be.
I mean, it depends. I mean, money, finances, time, all those things are factors.
Yeah, exactly. But the other thing though too is, with a local group, you're really establishing connection. Because you live in the same area. You're just wanting to grow together, and even then, it's even better because you can actually have a connection outside of the group and grow together in that way. So I'm a big community person in that way. If you didn't get that hint, you think about all these companies that are like the top companies now and all these other things, they all started like that. They all started as a group of like, hey, you know what we should do? We should do improv. Or it's the same thing with like Shakespeare. You know what I want to do? I want to open the greatest Shakespeare company in the country, and here you have Ashland, Oregon, and all these other things. They all started within their own local communities. And because that community thrived and grew, that's when it just grew into like a national thing. And that's why you have your LA, which a majority of, going back to SNL, a majority of SNL cast today come from LA. And vice versa. There are people on the street in New York, those kind of things. It's all about community in that aspect. And so I just long story short.
Yeah, it's all good.
No, it is. Just find a group that you connect with. That's really what it comes down to, whether it's a local community or even out in LA area and stuff, and you just want to make that commute. So there you go.
And even then, with classes online too, you can really take classes anywhere.
That's true. Yeah. Especially in today's environment, it's all online. And those are the other things too. You just go to open classes. You know, there are a lot of great things that I've unfortunately haven't had the time, ironically, in this whole predicament. But I've seen so many advertisements that I'm like, wow, you really couldn't do that in society as it was. But now you can do that sometimes free of charge. Or sometimes, you know, you pay a fee to get the link, and you're part of sometimes thousands of people viewing at once on something that in society, if it were to be normal today, takes no more than maybe 100 people or so. So it's those kind of things that it's a golden opportunity nowadays, especially to grow in areas that you feel like less in or so forth. So
I love it. Well, I lied. I said that was the last question, but I have one more question for you.
Okay. What's the other question?
And that is, would you like to do an improv scene?
I would love to do an improv scene.
All right, let's do it. So I have this, I'll ask you two questions. One is, do you want to initiate or do you want me to initiate?
You initiate.
Okay, great. And then do you want a location, a relationship, or a word?
That's a good one. Wow, I haven't given this power before. I feel so powerful.
There you go.
Let's do location.
Location. All right. The location is a florist. So like for those who don't know what that is, like a flower shop.
Yes, I know.
No, I'm just saying for the audience, you know, the proverbial audience that exists.
Yeah. Fun fact, I never really said this. I know we're going to do our improv scene.
No, yeah, it's all good.
Things that help you, and believe it or not, I heard Steve Martin say, comedy, learn your history.
It's true. It's
true. Very true. Learn your history, and you're like, there you go. Cool.
It's true.
There you go. So florist. Got it.
All right, florist. All right. Rebecca, sweetheart, I wanted you to know that I was thinking about you, so I just picked up the entire set of flowers from the flower shop. I literally bought the whole store.
You bought out Florence?
I did. I bought out the entire store. They're like basically closed now.
So this is what you're telling me? You bought out a flower shop for me?
For you, yeah, I did. Yes. I want to take.
How dare you! How dare you! You know we were using that money to buy the farm! How dare you!
Oh, sorry, I thought I would be spontaneous. I thought I'd surprise you.
Surprised! Don't get me wrong, I'm surprised. I'm surprised what an ignorant husband you are. You know that was my dream.
I know.
To make Canadian bacon. That was my dream.
I know you wanted ham, a lot of ham. I just thought, you know,
don't ham anymore. Oh, pork it.
I mean, we can still save up for.
How? How can we save up?
We just do what we did with
the last. Robert.
We just do what we did with the last thing. You know, with all the money that I spent on the flowers, we just do the same thing again.
Remind me, how much money did you spend on flowers that tend to last only like, who knows, a week? Given the proper care.
Yeah, I understand. $12,638. I bought the whole store, not the store itself, but all the flowers in the store.
I know. It would have been one thing if you bought the store, then we could have made our money back. But no, you have to buy all the flowers of the store. I just don't know how we're going to get out of this. I don't.
I'm sorry, I didn't think ahead. I was so in the moment. I was so madly in love that I was like, I've got to do this. And I don't know how I can repay you. I mean, I definitely can't.
You know how you
with
can
money.
repay me. You know that one thing we always do.
I think I do.
You know, it's the you know the the Steve Jobs impersonation. I always love it when you reveal the latest product.
You know, the Mac 2021.
Oh!
I'm Steve Jobs.
You're so good.
Oh, thanks.
Do it
I mean,
again,
I'm
do it
no.
again, do it again.
And now this product.
No. You need to have enter. You know what I mean? Like he always did.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay. Go. Okay.
All right.
Oh my God! It's him.
The new face of the iMac here. We've got all these faces: Charlie, Christina, Rowena, all of them here.
My dear.
For the Mac.
Okay. I forgive you for.
I mean, I know Michael Fassbender. I know Ashton Kutcher, but
no. Those two.
I'm no Steve Jobs, terrible. I guess either.
Yes. Yeah. No. You're no. Those people. You know they were not the adequate people I would have thought to play Steve Jobs in those movies. You know what I mean?
But I did it for you.
Thank you. And you know what? I do forgive you. Just go get the weed killer.
Scene.
Wow, that was random, but oh well.
You know,
that's just improv.
Weed killer on a farm, you know, sure, that they don't have, I guess. What weeds are we killing in this scene? That's my real question. I feel like there needs to be a sequel to this. Like, what's going on here?
Exactly, right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Man. All right, thanks everybody so much for coming. That was the Improv Summit. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
The Muppet bye. Bye. Bye.